All right, so let's go ahead and get started. First, a little bit about myself. I am a certified association executive with the American Society of Association Executives. Studied long and hard for that, and I think I even failed the exam the first time. But this is where I get a lot of the go there, Jack. Oh, there we go. Let's go ahead and mute Jack. This is where I gained a lot of the information that I use to help NAPF members with the things that they're dealing with in their park foundations. I have 20 years of nonprofit and trade association experience in various different types of, this is Parks and Rec, obviously, but I've also served on associations in fire and life safety, financial services, and construction. I am myself a former Parks and Recreation and Community Services Commissioner. I'm a trustee currently with my own foundation here in Santa Clarita. Here in McKinney, Texas, Santa Clarita, where I was originally from. And I'm also 30 years as an amputee peer counselor. And today is my 13th birthday. All right. So did I rush past that for you folks? Everybody knows this is February 29th, right? Right. Okay. So my birthday gives you an extra day this year. Isn't that sweet? So I bring a little something to the table, which I always try to do. All right, so before we get started, I want to go ahead and put up our survey question because I want to find out who's on our call today. So the survey question is, and I'll go ahead and put that right now. If everyone could respond to the survey, that would be great. It should be popping up on your screen. Hopefully you can see it. All right, so here's some answers are coming in. So basically, what is the current state of your park foundation? We don't have one, but we're curious. We are in startup mode or early stage. We've been around for a while and are going strong. We need to restart or reorganize an existing park foundations, or, and hopefully nobody answers this one, I'm on the wrong webinar. So please do it. Go ahead and pluck your answers in, please. And we'll give it another minute here. I want to try to get at least 90% participation. We're at 76. So if you haven't plugged your answer in yet, please do so. And then we'll reveal the results of where our audience is today in regard to park foundations. So some comments coming through, just starting. We started up, but it's slow. Thank you, Barbara. Yes, my wife also says I don't look a day over 12. Thank you, which is kind of creepy. And then, all right, great. Great. Fantastic. All right, let's end the poll. Share results. Okay, so it looks like the largest percentage of today's audience are in startup mode. So early stage, that's great. That's awesome. You guys have taken the plunge. Maybe you've already figured out some of the board members. Maybe you filed for your 501c. The second largest group is we've been around a while and are going strong. Great. We just love to hear that kind of news, that your organization is providing benefit, for parks and recreation in your community. And then 8 people are looking to restart or reorganize an existing park foundation. That is so common. Time is the killer of organizations. So the longer that time goes by, the more attention has to be paid to an organization. Keep it relevant, keep it active, keep it producing, right? Fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Now that we know who everybody's here, we'll go ahead and stop sharing and we'll continue. All right, so one of the big questions that we're here to answer today is how do park foundations broaden community engagement? So park foundations offer a viable solution for bridging funding gaps in parks and recreation. Well, that's pretty obvious, right? The whole point of having a park foundation is for it to be the philanthropic arm of the park and recreation agency. So the agency is generally, in most cases, responsible for most of the creation and the maintenance of the parks and recreation, all of the programming, as well as in most of the programming, as well as all of the infrastructure. But it is the park foundation that goes out there in the community and it raises money that helps bridge the gap. As we all know, fire and life safety, as well as police and social services, are taking an ever more larger chunk of the tax base out of our communities. And really, it is the Park and Recreation Foundation that's able to help close that gap. So they also increase park capacity and can influence and support the process of creating more parks, in which in turn reduces unsustainable traffic in parks. Again, this kind of goes to the first point. With more resources, you get more parks, right? So with more resources, you get more programming, right? And as your park foundation grows, really what one of the key areas that the agency should be looking at is how can it use those assets, that money that's being raised by the Park Foundation, to add more infrastructure to the Parks and Recreation catalog, right? So that works out really well. Another way that park foundations broaden community engagement is they ensure that the community is a stakeholder. This is most important here. This is the one opportunity, I think, above all the other opportunities, for regular, average, everyday citizens to get involved in the process. Ultimately, what you want to do is you want to have representation. You want to give a voice to community members. And maybe that's as part of the board of directors. Maybe it is, keep having open meetings and having speaking sessions and listening sessions that are held by the foundation to get community input. But the Park Foundation is, for the most part, it's a little closer to the citizens than perhaps maybe the park agency is. And so it cuts that separation between the citizens and the park and recreation assets in the community. Similarly, it's a great way to increase volunteerism and manage volunteer efforts. This is, I think, a growing part of the Park Foundation world. Some park foundations are starting specifically to do this, and that is to encourage volunteerism in the parks. And you can utilize the Park Foundation to organize and manage those volunteers, meaning really it would be the Park Foundation that organizes the volunteer days in the parks. The Park Foundation that I serve on here in McKinney, Texas, started for that purpose, and it continues to be the largest aspect of what it does. Every 2 Saturdays a month are work days in the park, and sometimes there's 2 work days going on in different parks simultaneously. And I think as our organization grows, we'll continue to add more and more of that. So don't, even if your organization is, really working more in the area of raising funds for the park agency, don't forget another asset that the Park Foundation can bring is working with the volunteers. They also allow for the fundraising. They also allow for raising and use of private funds. Of course, it is possible for folks to make a donation to the park agency. However, in most cases, those funds go to the general operating fund of the city. And I think most people, especially those who give philanthropically, understand that. And really, there is a strong bias against making donations directly to the agency or the city. So having a park foundation, a 501c3 organization, I think is more attractive to donors, especially large donors, because large donors obviously are presented with a significant tax reduction, right? If they give large sums of money, they want to be able to get that deduction. And I think it's possible to do it by giving to a government agency. However, it's not the preferred method to do it. And obviously, from a marketing standpoint, people are just a lot more open to giving to a nonprofit organization. So also, we can't forget about, grants. Again, here's another area where, the agency can apply for grants. However, a lot of grant applications do ask the question, is your organization a 501c3? And the reason they ask this is about for the same reason as the previous point is that there's a strong desire to contribute to the mission of nonprofit organizations, more so than directly with an agency or a city or a county or a district, as it relates to our conversation today. So this is a fantastic opportunity to get experience on your foundation in filling out grants. The NAPF is going to have content later this year where we'll talk more about the process of grants and we'll look a little bit into some best practices. So do stay tuned for that as well. And then finally, they can be used to help promote parks and recreation improvement bonds. If your community is looking to go out for a park and recreation bond or a multi-use bond that includes park and recreation funding, it makes sense to have your Park and Recreation Foundation a part of that marketing effort and that conversation. I think the board members of a park foundation are excellent to have at community scoping meetings to answer questions from community members about how these funds might be used, where these funds come from, what it's going to cost the taxpayers. So a park foundation, and to be honest with you, I think it's the responsible thing to do is, before a community would go out to bond, I think having an active park foundation sends the signal that there's an organization that is operating, that's trying to raise money outside of needing to go to bonds. But in the end, the best argument for going to bond, I think, can be made from the perspective of a park foundation. So let's go to our first takeaway. And these are, I'm 3 takeaways today, and these are kind of the things that I want to leave with you kind of stuck in your brain. Park foundations empower communities by channeling private funds and public engagement into the creation and maintenance of vibrant, accessible green spaces. Their support is crucial in promoting the growth and sustainability of parks, ensuring they remain a cherished part of our urban landscapes. And I think that statement right there talks a lot about why we have park foundations in the first place. And it really is about growing and sustaining equitable, accessible green spaces for the current population and hopefully for many populations in the future. All right. So let's talk now about some key functions of park foundations, beginning with centralized fundraising. So park foundations are able to consolidate resources for park improvements across the community. So if you have a lot of park spaces in your community and that they're spread out over a large area, I think having another organization, that is specializing in fundraising, really being able to communicate with all of those park spaces about what's needed. And then that creates the opportunity to bring all of those resources under one fundraising arm. I know there's communities out there that have multiple friends groups for individual parks. I'm talking to a lot of those folks because they're interested in combining their forces and creating one park foundation that oversees all of the park spaces in their community. Talking about a unified voice. So park foundations represent the common interests and needs for all of the community parks. Again, just like centralizing fundraising, you want to centralize those communications so that because you're centralizing the entire effort, there's the opportunity to make sure that each park gets an opportunity to be seen for what it needs or what its assets are, or if awards and accolades are given out for park spaces, that every park in that community is recognized equally. As far as community engagement go, park foundations host events and programs that attract a diverse population to various parks. Again, having a central organization within your community that is thinking about events, just like it's thinking about fundraising and volunteers, right? It's a fantastic way to ensure that there's community engagement going on throughout the parks in your entire community. Strategic planning. All of your agencies out there, whether they're districts or cities, they are operating on a master plan. So it's also important that the community itself, but a master plan is different than a strategic plan. A master plan talks about what type of assets are we going to have, what is the concentration going to be, what are our mission, vision, and values for those assets in the future. The strategic planning that's done, if it's done successfully at the park foundation level, unites all of those park assets and really draws into the question of how are we going to continue to maintain these assets over time? How are we going to care for them? what are the key areas where we're going to concentrate our efforts as a park foundation. For instance, park foundations are being used successfully now to be able to go into less heard from parts of the population, enclaves within communities that just really don't put their hand up and say, hey, we have some needs here. The Park Foundation, I think, is an excellent resource to do that. And that's becoming the part of the strategic plan for many of the park foundations out there. Another key function of park foundations is resource allocation. I think having community members that are devoted to the park foundation and who can help shepherd the resources. Obviously, the park foundation is the vehicle for that. And again, it involves the community. So the community is a part of that process of allocating those resources. Advocacy. No organization, I think, is complete without doing some level of advocacy. Excuse me. And the collective advocacy of a park foundation is superior to small friends groups within a particular community doing their advocacy. So kind of bringing the entire advocacy issue under one umbrella, I think, is very helpful towards ensuring that those advocacy efforts are successful. And then creating collaboration and partnerships, facilitating partnerships between different parks for shared initiatives and programming is key here. And so it is important to ensure that we are looking at the from the 10,000 foot view, all of our park assets. And so that we have an opportunity to ensure that we are allocating resources and that we are hearing the voices from each part of the community. A park foundation is really one of the best ways to do that. And that brings us to takeaway number 2. Park foundations centralize fundraising and advocacy, fostering community engagement and ensuring equitable park development that resonates with the collective voice of the community. Through strategic planning and collaborative partnerships, they enhance and unify the park experience for everyone. And so that's another takeaway that I wanted from this last section that we just went through, is to kind of talk through in your own community how you can utilize the Park Foundation to centralize all of the things that need to be done, whether it's fundraising, advocacy, volunteerism, community engagement, equity in our parks, ensuring accessibility. All of these conversations can and really should start at the Park Foundation level. So I want to take a second here. If you are having a question already, I would love to hear from you. We will also have plenty of time at the end, but if you have a question, you can go ahead and put that. Are people seeing my chat screen? I see here there's a question. Everybody can see my screen, correct? Right? Any questions so far? Is my presentation that complete? Can someone say hey, that they're out there?
Hello. Hey.
All right. So if there isn't any questions so far, I will continue on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patricia. Hey, back. All right. So obviously, one of the reasons that the National Association of Park Foundations exists is to help communities that are interested in doing so start a park foundation. That is the reason that the NAPF was started in the first place. If you talk to the folks who were among the first management and board team that started the NAPF, they will tell you how there was not at the time a resource that was solely dedicated to helping communities start and grow their park foundations. And that is really that's the genesis of what the organization is today and what we're doing. So one of the things that we do talk a lot about is what is the process for starting a park foundation. So we'll go through that first. These are just the basic things that you need to do to start a park foundation, and we'll get into a little bit more detail as we get further into the presentation today. But the first thing you need to do, obviously, is identify the need. Is your community struggling to raise enough money to cover the needs of park and recreation in your community? If so, you should start a park foundation. If you're looking for a way to manage your volunteer efforts, park foundation would be a good idea. And there are many, 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 many different reasons for starting a park foundation. And I want you all thinking about it as we go into the next Q&A section at the end. I'd love to hear from folks how what needs they identified in their community for a park foundation, and we can talk through some of those and share some of those with other folks that are on the meeting today. So the number 2 thing that you need to do is find 3 or more initial board members. Well, the main, obviously you're going to need a board from the very beginning, but you can't even file for a nonprofit organization unless you have 3 initial board members. And that is to ensure to the IRS that citizens of legal U.S. residency are the ones that are applying for the nonprofit status of 501c3. You need to have someone to assign as an administrator. Oftentimes, this is one of those initial 3 board members, but it could also be someone from the Parks and Recreation Agency. And many times the directors themselves take on the role of kind of helping shepherd the process of creating the Park Foundation, and can be a huge asset towards ensuring that the process is continuous and is completed in a timely manner. So that, like, again, as I said, someone, a member of the community, maybe it's a former, maybe they're former parks commissioners or current park commissioners, other folks to kind of take ownership for administering the process. And then obviously later on down the road, things like adding an executive director or other assets are brought to bear. And then this is where you kind of start to get into the legal steps of starting a park foundation. You do need to request an employer identification number from the IRS. It is that employer identification number that in a future step will be the number that identifies you as a nonprofit organization. That EIN number would be registered once you get your C3 with the IRS. So anytime someone, for instance, claimed that they made a donation to your organization, it would include that EIN number. So that would tell the IRS that, yes, this donation went to a nonprofit organization. So it's tax deductible. And then as soon as you get your EIN, which can take as little as 24 hours in some cases, depending on how quickly, because I think that's all done online now. I remember when I first started starting up organizations, you had to send away by mail and it could take weeks. But once you have that EIN, you'll use that to register with the state that you are in. So now your IRS EIN is going to identify you as an organization in your state. And every state's different. I've gone through many of them, but most of them are utilizing that part of the process so that you're registering as a nonprofit organization in the state, as a corporation doing business. Every business in a state needs to register with the state, and that's what you're doing in this part of the process. So then you get to go and file Form 1023. Lots of forms in the IRS, right? 1099, W-2. The 1023 is the application for nonprofit status with the IRS. That document, if your organization is in startup mode, you generally use the Form 1023 EZ, which, like your annual filing, is tied to bringing in assets less than $200,000 per year, which is where most organizations are going to start, right? Unless you got $1 million waiting in the wings, you're going to use Form 1023 EZ to apply for your nonprofit status. And that's a very simple form. The full form is a little bit more complicated, but it's not. I think it's doable. However, I think last time I looked at Form 1023 Easy, it's like a postcard, so very little information. And then it's important to note at that point that once you file Form 1023 with your articles and your bylaws, you've then basically created the nonprofit, and then you can actually start acting as a nonprofit organization. You can solicit, you have your EIN, you can solicit at that time donations that are tax deductible. And then within 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes maybe as long as 2 months, the IRS will get back to you with a letter indicating specifically that yes, you have been awarded the IRS nonprofit status, and you're moving forward. So let's move on to kind of what NAPF's role is in all of this. Because I think it's, again, as I mentioned earlier, NAPF was set up because this is a process that has many moving parts to it. We just discussed the first thing that you need to do to start a park foundation, and that is to actually get to the point where you have a 501c3 status. But that's really only the beginning of the challenges that your organization is going to face in the future. There are many different things as far as mission, vision, values, and culture that need to be placed inside of the organization to ensure that it's able to meet the mission of the park agency, which is what the case is in most situations, partnered with a park agency, so that the foundation is best equipped to be able to serve the mission of that park and recreation agency. And in short order, will be able to create assets, meaning raise money, that can then be used for fulfilling the park agency's mission, which is to create more park spaces, programming, and infrastructure for parks and recreation. So one of the things that we do here at the NAPF is we work with the agencies throughout the process that I described earlier. I don't do the work for our members, but I will hold your hand through the process. I've set up more than 50 nonprofit organizations in my 20 years in the nonprofit world. I know all the hurdles and the tricks and the things that need to be accomplished and when. And NAPF members enjoy being able to have me as kind of their backstop to help them work through the process of starting their organization. We provide the resources, both those that we house on our website and one-on-one consulting. So even park foundations that have been around a while, and we saw in the survey that there's a number of folks representing park foundations that, for whatever reason, are in a restart mode. We have the resources and we have the knowledge and the experience through myself, our chief consultant, Dr. Nathan Shamloffel, my very, very well experienced board of directors, as well as the other folks that we work with in the Parks and Rec Foundation community to help your organization get to where it is. So whether you're wanting to start a brand new organization from the ground up, or you need to restart an organization, we've done all of this already for folks. So it would make sense, right, to come to the organization if you're looking to do this, unless you already have all the answers. We're here to help provide those answers and take all of the things that we've learned as an organization over the last 8 years and apply those to helping you improve the outcomes in your brand new or your restarted park foundation. I think developing best practices for the industry and then sharing those with our members, and sometimes even with many of the other organizations that are not members, is one of the things that the NAPF does. We talk about parks more holistically, I think, maybe than other organizations in the park and rec space do. We think about parks and recreation from an equality and equitable standpoint, but also in how parks and recreations are used in our society today. We have an article up on our blog that I wrote some time ago, researching how parks and recreation were affected by the COVID lockdowns. A strong lesson was learned am I right? During the COVID lockdowns in regard to parks and recreation should be an asset that can be utilized to help stop the spread of something rather than shutting parks and recreation down and not allowing folks to get out and be outside and be healthy and be active. So we really believe we see ourselves as a voice for advocacy to help support parks and recreation in communities around the country. We're quickly and constantly developing curriculum that helps educate the various people that are involved in parks and recreation foundations. You already are aware that as volunteers, many of you, that you're obviously a key person in the success of your park foundation. We're developing curriculum that is going to help you do what you do better. And there are also professional staff at park foundations that are also in need of education and learning content. And we're creating the vehicles for this content. And then also, we don't forget about our friends at the agency. Many agencies are intimately involved in the efforts of what park foundations are doing and what the needs are. And they're assessing the needs at the agency level that are then utilized by the foundation providing resources. So we also are working and never forgetting about our folks at the agency that need additional education in philanthropy or parks and recreation in general. And we're helping to continue to close the gap when it comes to ensuring that everybody in the agency is also being educated like everybody in the foundation is with NAPF's content. And then, supporting community certification, we're working as an organization not to necessarily start our own certifications, but to supplement the continuing education content out there with content that is more towards park foundations that can then qualify to help those folks that have park and recreation certifications, and there's a number of them out there, to use those continuing education hours. In the meantime, we're considered a resource for park and recreation education. So we do hand out certificates of completion for a lot of our content. If you ever need to log some time that you spent with NAPF, I keep records of everybody who attended the webinars, and you can always just reach out to me and I can give you something that supports your attendance at an NAPF event. All right, so we're moving quickly here. So NAPF can help you grow your park foundation for success. How do we do that? Well, as I mentioned earlier, we have the startup documents. We have step-by-step assistance. I'm here to look at your Form 1023 before you send it off. I can review your bylaws and your articles of incorporation. I can help you assess your mission. Your mission is part of your bylaws. So we're here from the early stages to help you do that. And again, as I said, the mission and vision and values of an organization are critical to the success of a park foundation, especially a park foundation, because they're the marketing arm of what we do, why we do it, and what are the things that we're going to hold fast to while we do it. What are the things that we hold dear as we go through this process, whether it is ensuring access to open spaces, maybe it's a combination of ensuring access, but also keep our assets in the most natural state possible. That is all done through your mission, vision, and values. The recruitment and retention of board members is also another critical way that NAPF can be helpful to the mission of your organization. I have worked with thousands of volunteers over my 20 years of nonprofit experience. I have developed ways to help board members, find their place in an organization. NAPF provides training to your board. We can give you, a good idea of just in some conversation with you, what you should be looking for in board members. I don't think it's always naturally known. Well, who should we be going out and finding to join our board? Well, the answer to that question relates heavily to number one, what is the mission of the organization? Number two, who's already on board as a board member? Number three, do you or do you not have staff All of those questions, once they're answered, will give me an opportunity to help you figure out who your board members, who you should be recruiting. And then we can take the opportunity to help you train those board members. As I mentioned, we do I do a 90 to 120-minute board training and scoping session with our members. I've done about 6 or 7 of these now. They are at a little bit of additional cost above the cost of membership. But this is a customized training going through all the ins and the outs and the responsibilities and the legal requirements, risk, and all of the things that go along with board service. I talk about and answer questions to the board about all of these things so that folks who walk away from these trainings, even if they don't have any previous board experience, are going to have a very strong idea about what they should be doing and what the responsibilities and what their fiduciary requirements are for board service. We're constantly developing and sharing with our members the best practices for managing the foundation. You know, whether it's volunteer days, we have some content that we did last year on volunteer days, how to manage them. We're always looking for ideas from you, the members, and the prospects out there, non-members, that what content would you like to see NAPF produce for you that can help you do what you do better. We do strategic planning with our members. It's a different process than strategic planning has been done in the past, where oftentimes large amounts of time were spent maybe in a recreation facility, putting little dots on, ideas on little boards. We offer at the NAPF a completely remote strategic plan process. We're working with a number of organizations right now on their strategic plans. And this is a strategic plan process that I've been developing for the last 20 years. And really since COVID, have really fine-tuned that process so that we can deliver a complete and total strategic plan remotely. So we don't even need to travel out to where you are. Of course, we can if you want us to. But what I'm finding from members is, look, we don't want to spend $10,000, $20,000 on putting together a strategic plan, but we have to have one. Well, this is a tool that I created for NAPF that allows you, for a significantly less amount of money than $10,000, have a full strategic plan that your organization can use to operate for the next 2 to 4 or 5 years. And it includes the pillars that you'll operate on, the big picture items that you're going to be dealing with, as well as the metrics for success. What's it going to take to be successful? We'll provide that information. And then also suggestions on how the board and staff can work together to achieve the strategic plan. So that's another area where NAPF is highly involved and deeply impactful in the growth and the future of park foundations. Developing a philanthropic plan. I think every park foundation has to have a plan and a marketing case for that plan. Right now, the NAPF is filling the last couple of seats for a 10-week online training that is a combination of live and recorded meetings, as well as work that you do on your own in our association management system. Those who've been to college in recent years or have worked with their children in remote learning, the LMS system is the vehicle by which we're able to utilize the availability of you to be able to learn as you go and on your particular time frame. Dr. Nathan Shamloffel, who's an associate professor at Indiana State University, is the instructor for that course. He is very well respected in that field. There is a cost associated with it. It is on our website under events. If you're interested in getting more information, I think we pretty much have answered all the questions. There's only a couple of seats left, though. So if you are interested in getting into this program, please do go to our website today and take a look at what we're offering. We always love to share great things that our members are doing out there as far as events go. I think everybody knows how to run a golf tournament now. We probably don't need to go over that again. But what are the other, ways that our park foundations, can raise money that isn't just annual giving, right? Events is one of those. One of our members recently engaged in what they're calling house parties, where each board member, either at their place of business or at a local business or in their home, hosts some of the people that are in their sphere of influence to raise money. So it's kind of a way that individual board members can contribute to the process of raising money for parks and recreation in the community. And I mean, there's so much more I could talk about with regard to what NAPF does, but I always try to cut everything under an hour on these webinars. If you have specific needs, we're going to have Q&A here in a second. I'm happy to talk about that. I am also available. Shoot me an email, info@the-napf.org, and we can talk about specific needs that your park foundation needs. Many of the things that I've talked about today were services that were identified because a park foundation, brought a need to us, and we figured out a way to help answer that question or solve that problem they were having. And that takes us to our third takeaway. The NAPF is ready to assist in establishing and or enhancing your park foundation to ensure the greatest success in improving outcomes for parks and recreation. And of course, as I said, reach out to me if you'd like to learn more or if you have any specific questions. But I do want to take the opportunity again to answer any questions. Let's see if there was anything in the Q&A here. All right. Okay, so April suggested there should be caution in Parks Department employee or government employee taking the role as leading the Park Foundation startup. She says that in her opinion, it should be a community representative with a neutral position. Well, that's just generally not how park foundations start. So whereas I do agree that there needs to be separation between the park foundation and the park agency, the way that separation occurs is that the park foundation is a separate board, and anybody from the park agency that works with the park foundation is not a voting board member. They're called what's an ex officio, but the influence of the agency is critical for the park foundation to be able to obtain the culture and the needs and the understanding and the awareness that's going on at the agency so that it can then deal with those things from a philanthropic or volunteer or the other ways that we talked about today. So I totally get what you're saying, but that's why we go through the whole process of applying for a 501c3 through the IRS, is so that we can create a separate board. Now, I will tell you that I have been working with park foundations out there that have their there's intermingling between their board of commissioners and their park foundation. There has to be separation there. But I would encourage every park director out there who's thinking about starting a park foundation, take the reins of this process. I will steer you towards an organization that has the proper firewalls set up between the agency and the foundation. But I don't want to over worry people and think that, oh man, we don't have a community member who's going to come in and do this for us. There's only me, the director, or there's only my staff. Don't be afraid. We understand how these things work, and we know what the IRS wants to see, and we'll ensure that your organization is set up in a legal and ethical manner. Let's see what else we have here. An EIN is issued almost immediately when you apply. Yes, that's true. Back in the old days, like I said, it took a long time. One more add-on here. Depending on your state's laws, you may need to register your new organization with the state agency that oversees charitable solicitations before you begin asking for donors for funds. Yes, Virginia is one of those states. Very good. Thank you for that. And there's, if you look in the, it looks like Michael's provided the website for the Council of Nonprofits. We also have a resource on our website That's a nonprofit organization that also offers for free a complete and total toolkit. If you really want to go, start your organization by the numbers, they have all the information about the filing requirements in every state. So if you're already a member, that is in the toolkit that is on the website. Thanks, Michael. Okay, fundraising house parties on Amazon. So there's products, and I have to take a look at that one. I'm going to save that one. So Michael provided a resource for hosting house parties. Do other park foundations charge membership fees? And if so, how much? Okay, so membership, that's an interesting area that we've been looking into as well. Yes, a park foundation is also a cool way to be able to set up a resource there in your community where members of the community can pay for a membership with the foundation and receive some sort of benefit from that. Maybe it's, free days at the public pool, or, a free t-shirt, or, there's all kinds of things that you can do. I have another resource on our website that talks about how you go about what's the reasons for having a membership in your park foundation for regular members to be able to join. And it also talks about what you need to do, the assets that you need to bring to start one of those. So that's a great idea, Amy. Thank you for asking that question. I think there is a lot of wisdom in considering if your particular, now this isn't going to work everywhere, but if your particular park agency has assets that can be monetized by offering an annual sponsorship, this is a great way to help families be able to, buy a membership and have access throughout the year rather than having to pay for individual things. Happy to talk with anybody who would like to feel free to reach out if you'd like to discuss what you see going on in every community is going to be different in this capacity. So reach out to me. I'm happy to discuss with you what you're trying to do, and we can look at, what needs to happen to make it possible for you to have that membership. But with all of the advanced software that's available these days for managing memberships, it's really, and some of this stuff is dirt cheap. It really is possible to do that. So thank you for that question, Amy. Astro says, we are a recreation special district and already have a foundation that primarily works on access to recreation facilities and programming, not financing needs, parks. Sorry, I had to make this bigger. So I lost my place. It works on access to recreation facilities and programming, not financing new parks. Do you find that such foundations are better focused just on parks or including recreation, trails, and parks? Astro, great question. Every community needs to look at what their current assets are and decide for themselves how many of those assets can they take responsibility for. There are foundations out there that are park and trail foundations that do both. But there are also, as many of you know, a number of nonprofit organizations do nothing but manage trails. So you kind of have to look inside your particular community and see, all right, well, and this is the reason why you'd want to consider including trails, is that in many cases, the parks are connected by the trails. So they're like one and the same, right? And so at least having your eye on trails as a park foundation, I think is a wise thing to do. And you just need to look at what is our current capacity and bandwidth for managing our trail systems. If you go to places in California and Colorado, there are intricate trail systems out there that, there's a lot of fine people that have started a lot of fine organizations to manage those. So I would encourage you to really look at what your assets are. And then again, feel free to, if you want to talk about your specific situation, reach out to me. Happy to talk with you about, what my experience has been. I cut my teeth on trail work. We, in the city of Santa Clarita, where I am originally from, we had interactions between various trail users, equestrian, runners, and cyclists that was creating some legal issues that needed to be resolved. And we had to bring in the county, the city, the Department of Forestry, and probably 7 or 8 other 4-letter agencies to be able to come to a policy that created equitable trail access in our community. So that was the first real experience I had in park and recreation policy. And that's what kind of led later on to getting involved in parks generally in my community. Thank you for that, Astro. Great comment and question. So Bill Dunlap asked, when a park foundation is formed, is it formed as a public charity or private foundation under the IRS definitions? They are set up as private foundations. A public charity is a much less used designation. And really, to be honest with you, very little of the information in the Form 1023 or your annual 990 even talk about this. It's one of those distinctions that the users, there's a lot of these, and this is one of the reasons why knowing IRS law is so important. It's one of those distinctions without a definition, or a definition without a distinction, that the IRS set up many years ago, that really, just by the way that the whole nonprofit world has evolved, has kind of become a non-issue. But if you think that there's an issue, I would suspect that it would be related to large donations. So if you are an organization this is the one area where you'll want to know, if you are an organization that has traditionally taken a lot of small donations, and all of a sudden someone comes to you with a large donation, give me a call, send me an email. Let's talk through. I'll pull up your filing and make sure that you don't have to take any additional steps. If you're a public charity, there are additional steps that are taken that will ensure that the IRS understands the circumstances under which you took that large donation. So please, for most of you out there, this is never going to be an issue. But if you are taking a large donation and you don't commonly take large donations, give me a call. We'll make sure that you're covered. Is Friends of the Foundation membership a good way to raise funds? Yes. As I mentioned previously, having a small membership group and offering maybe on your website a couple of different types of membership that have some sort of benefit. The key thing to remember here is you need to offer something for that, because otherwise you're just asking for money, right? Offer something for that, even if it's just a t-shirt, or an invitation to an event, or a discount on things. If you're going to have a membership has benefits, right? Otherwise you're just asking for like a sustaining donation. So think about, and I'm happy to collaborate with you as well on what could your park agency and foundation offer in the way of a membership benefit. Can you speak to investment vehicles products that foundations can use to hold their endowment? No. That is not people. I am not the fundraising person. That is Dr. Nathan Shamloffel. I would also say that is folks like Donald Ortal, our former executive director. I will say this, Jonathan, all of the vehicle products and the endowment, all of that is talked about in and taught in the fundraising cohort that starts in April. So again, go to the events and see online training. That is covered in that. Now there's a price associated with that, obviously, but I'm not specifically the person who deals on the fundraising side of the NAPF. That is a very specialized knowledge. I am planning on taking that course as well with Dr. Nathan Shamloffel. So I plan to be better at it, but I don't go where I don't know, right? But I appreciate that question, Jonathan. And hey, consider signing up for the cohort. I think you'll get a lot out of it, much more than even you're asking in your question. Can you explain more about how funds raised in the foundation then get used for the park agency? Well, the best way to do that is to have the money, right? Understand, as a park foundation, the money is not there to sit in a bank account, right? You obviously need to keep an operating fund, with separate from the funds that are available. And depending on whether they're restricted or non-restricted, the funds can either go to whatever the foundation approves, or they may be restricted funds that are specifically allocated for a particular project. And the best method, the legalist method, the sanest method, if you will, for allocating those funds is to have the park agency make a request of the board, and the board will approve those funds for that. Now, when it comes to larger and ongoing projects, there probably should be an allocation every year for that. But in the case of and having a process for at your park foundation for what metrics you want the agency to provide to you about funding the work of the park agency, I think is key. I think that another area that we didn't talk about this, and I'm going to put it in a future version of this, is scholarships, right? So a lot of park foundations, and I'm surprised no one asked about it, a lot of park foundations want to know about how do we use scholarships, right? How do we use the foundation, the money the foundation raises to provide swim lessons or camp registrations or whatever it is that your municipality is providing at either a lower or a free cost. And then you have to kind of decide what are going to be the requirements for that. Is it going to be a need requirement? For instance, those with the least amount of monetary resources qualify. But I think that as it relates specifically to your question, having a process by which the agency makes a formal request, whether that's annually or on an as needed basis, and then the board votes to allocate that money, and that is reflected in the meeting minutes, is really the best way to ensure that all of your legal bases are covered. Do you measure the awareness you generate for intel? And fortunately, Michael provides an example. For example, tracking how many impressions media articles generate, sharing articles with sponsors when their names appear in the article and to remind them their sponsorship is working, making adjustments to communications and message planning. Yes, yes, and yes. We have a pretty intricate what's called an association management system that is really kind of tied to our website. So I can see where people are going on my website. I can see keeps track of if you registered for this event. I have a record of that. And it does tell me who's going to my website the most, who's opening my emails the most, who's clicking the most. And I reach out to those folks and they hear from me from time to time. Hey, I hope you're interested in, I hope you really enjoy the content on the website. And I have automated messages that go out at certain points. So yes, we are using technology and the interaction with our website and our emails to be able to help generate more information. And obviously this is most helpful to me when I'm talking to a member about, updating their membership with our organization, renewing, because I can go into their account and I say, well, it looks like you attended a couple of webinars, did you get out of that what you would hope? Is the investment that you're making in the NAPF worth that? So yes, it is very helpful. And then also, one of the key things that I use too is I have several different Google alerts that are set up and sent to my email every day that talk about, that basically tell me where someone has come into the news that has a park foundation or a park alliance or a friends group. And so it helps me identify park foundations I'm not aware of, but also sometimes my members show up in there. And if you show up in the media and I catch it, I will send you an email congratulating you on the media hit, and asking you, maybe if you even want to have that information shared in our newsletter, which we put out quarterly. So yeah, absolutely. Great questions, Michael. Thank you. Can I provide context for member management software? We are partnered with Bloomerang, Bloomerang. I have interviewed half a dozen donor management systems. we have had a relationship with Bloomerang in one way or another from the very beginning. They really are considered one of the gold standards. The people who are leading the technology at Bloomerang have 30, 40 years of experience and come from companies that were the leaders back in the old times. But the technology has changed so much. And I'll tell you, they're a sponsor of the NAPF, so don't forget about that. But they have, for what I can tell, the most complete and total systems for park foundations to be able to manage what they do and do it well. So they're involved also in our online curriculum. They are the official sponsor for that, and they'll be explaining their product to the students that are in that online fundraising training. So thank you for that question as well. And thank you, Michael. So Michael just dropped some different, and Bloomerangs among them. Always like to give a shout out to all of the companies out there that are doing this work. And there are so many. Charity Engine is the one that didn't get brought up in here. I've talked with them as well. They're pretty good. Wild Apricot is more of a member management system, like what NAPF does. We started with Wild Apricot. We're on a company called Journey Care now. Your membership, I've worked in that as well. All good stuff. But there is a difference between companies like Bloomerang and Wild Apricot. Bloomerang is a donor management system. Wild Apricot is a member management system. So keep that in mind. You may want to go one way or the other, and both kind of have some overlapping, features. But think about what it is your real objective is here. Are you out there trying to raise money philanthropically, or are you wanting to start memberships? You should talk to whatever vendor you're speaking to. Let them know what you're trying to do, so that and all of these companies will set up a call with you. Ask those questions, and so you can get a better idea, since there's so many different products out there, and even two different complete areas, membership versus philanthropy, that you should be concerned about when you're looking at an organization that's going to be your software hub, your application for running your organization. Are you aware of any foundations that provide high school scholarships for students that are pursuing a Parks and Recreation field career? Well, it'd have to be a relatively well-funded, successful park foundation. I don't know of any offhand. However, if you're talking about, potential resources, ways that park foundations can spend money, and I know we've gone over the hour. It's so funny how time flies when you're doing this. So I do understand that people have to leave, but I'll stay on and continue to answer these questions as they come up. But yeah, I think if anyone wants to drop comments in there as well, leading folks to resources about this, I think that scholarships in general, like for instance, more on the level of providing services to community members, is something that's very widely used, obviously, and a well-funded park foundation that's interested in helping develop park and recreation careers should consider the possibility of setting up a scholarship. And you don't have to, and a scholarship doesn't have to provide an entire education, right? It could be a $500 scholarship to allay the costs of study materials, for instance. I think when you talk about, there's going to be a tremendous need in the future for more well-trained and educated folks to manage parks and recreation as it becomes a bigger and bigger asset, a bigger and bigger share of municipal activity. So I think that makes perfect sense. Thank you for asking about that, April. Yes, a good point there, Tim. Definitely look at your state park foundation website for information. They may have a tab on scholarships, and then the national organizations do as well. So great. Thank you for that, Tim. Can you share the names again of the title of the non-voting board? Ex officio, Kara. Ex officio is a non-voting board member. And yes, they can be part of the park staff. Thank you, Casey. So Michael has another resource about helping. 3 a year for $1,500 each. Oh, goodness. Great. That's great. So yeah, so Barbara's foundation provides 3 scholarships a year at $1,500 a piece to help buy a new computer. That's a nice computer. All right. And then Kara says, thank you. So Tim put up another resource here. American Academy for Park and Recreation Administration has a career development committee and is working on a national campaign for parks and recreation as a viable career choice. So that's great. Really appreciate everyone. Yeah. So Barbara, April's asking where you are. If you want to drop that in the chat, that'd be great. Before we go, I just want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in today for this webinar. Obviously, we're trying to do a number of things with a webinar like this. We're trying to provide additional education to our members, but we also want to encourage those folks that have not taken the plunge yet in an NAPF membership to think about doing so. We raise our money from a couple of different things, our education resources, the memberships, and then also these very excellent product and service providers in the park and recreation space, United States Tennis Association and Court Reserve on racket sports. Greenfields Outdoor Fitness has a whole line of accessible outdoor exercise equipment. Direct Access Group is an international consultancy dedicated to creating more accessible parks. Play CE is an organization that works with communities to help them develop better community scoping meetings using Play. If your organization is looking to have better scoping, they're a great organization to look into. And then obviously I already talked about Bloomerang. So I think all of those folks, and I'm really just so grateful that you folks took some time to tune in today. If you don't already have my organization, I have put it up on the screen here. And I really appreciate one more question. You were saying something about what foundations need to do with large donations. Call me, Joe. If you're going to have a large donation and you don't normally get large donations, send me an email or give me a call. We'll talk about it. Every case is different. It probably means nothing. It probably won't be a big deal, but if you have questions about it, let me know and we'll talk through it. Again, thank you everyone for participating today. Really appreciate everyone's support. For those that are our members, thank you. Those who are not members, I hope that you will take the opportunity to look into a membership with the NAPF. Not only will we help you and your park foundation, but the resources you provide us help and go out and do the things that we do at a very low cost for our members and for our prospects. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.